So the music industry, it's dying. It's dying pretty quickly too. Um, and what has had me thinking about this, or wanting to speak about it, it was about like maybe around a month ago. I seen a video of DJ Academics talking about it, and when he was talking about it, he was like doing the thing where like he was doing commentary on it on a podcast that Jimmy Iovine was on. And Jimmy Iovine is a music executive who was an executive for Interscope Records. I think he founded Interscope Records actually. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But and he was the one that he's behind NWA, well not NWA, but Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. Uh, More so particularly Dr. Dre and the Chronic and Eminem as well, and 50 Cent, right? And he's him and Dr. Dre together. They came up with Beats and sold it to Apple for like billions of dollars and all that, right? So he's somebody that's well versed in the music industry, and he was discussing that, like the reasonings as to why. So that's what kind of inspired me to talk about this, right? But basically, the main culprits in regards to this is the economics of streaming, AI music, and live slash touring, like the market in that crashing. So I'm not saying that like music itself is dying, specifically the industry surrounding it. Right? There's another executive. Well, I guess he was more so an A&R, but named Ray Daniels. And Ray Daniels, how he compared it, he's basically saying that what's going on right now is like he basically compared the music industry to a club, right? Like just picture like the best club in Atlanta or Miami or whatever city you want to name, right? And for a long period of time, this club has always had a line going out the door, right? The club's filled with people, and there's like a line going out the door and all that, right? And but he's saying how the music industry used to work is that like you had to get through, you had to make sure you had the right clothes on, da 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 da, or you weren't allowed inside the club, inside the party, right? But now the situation now is instead of a line outside, there's a crowd, right? And so he's basically saying that like basically all the people in the crowd out there, they don't know what's going on inside the club, and the party is about to be over, right? And everybody in the club is like wondering like what's everybody gonna do, da 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 da, where's the after party and all that kind of stuff, right? Because due to how things are working, the music industry as it is going to collapse, right? So, and to kind of make the comparison a little clearer, it it'd probably be good to add in that like like anybody who's familiar with party culture or going to like parties when you're like a teenager and stuff like that, right? Any time where a party ended up getting shut down early for whatever reason, say it's like police or the whoever's throwing the party, their parents come home and say the party's off or whatever, right? Usually, right, when everybody ends up flowing outside, they start discussing plans on what they're going to do because the night's not over yet, right? So somebody might say, hey, after party, somewhere around 15, 20 minutes away, right? And then everybody's going there, and then like, right, and then there's some people who may have their own personal party going on, right? But the bottom line is that when the party's over, particularly if people are still in the mood to party, well, the show must go on, right? So now I want to talk about what's causing these things because the main culprit for these things, as I said, would be streaming economics, the flood of AI music that's coming in, and the crashing of the live slash touring market. Right now, something to mention first is, I think at least, is why streaming even ended up becoming a thing. Right, because see, from the inception of the music industry and recorded music, right? it it was the whole thing for an artist to make music and they sell the album, right? Before they had in the 90s it was CDs, before that I think it was cassette tapes, and before that was like vinyl, like vinyl records, right? And so basically the main point was selling the physical copy of the music. It was selling the vinyl record. It was selling the cassette tape. It was selling the album, the CD, right? And the tour was basically promotion for the album, right? But now when Napster came in and basically downloaded music along with the internet, like people getting the ability to just download music very quickly, right? That is what started to change the game because CDs immediately stopped selling as much as they used to, right? And eventually, with YouTube coming into play and people starting to put music on the internet for streaming, like just to play it online, that's what even started to make things even worse, right? In regards to artists being able to get money from their music itself, right? So now, due to that, that caused a shift in the music industry where they started introducing what was called 360 deals, right? Because see, before, artists would basically be able to keep a lot of their touring money, right? Because the label would make so much money from selling albums, right? Even for mid-tier artists who would probably maybe only sell like 50,000 records, right? They would make so much money from the record because remember, people were paying anywhere from 10 to 15, maybe in times when the economy was a little worse, maybe even $20 for a CD, right? So if an artist sells 10,000 copies of a $20 CD or of a $15 CD, that's a good amount of money, right? Whereas nowadays with streaming, it's a little bit harder, right? So now some facts here that I have about streaming is basically streaming pays a tiny fraction per play, right? Basically fractions of a penny. So even big hits barely pay unless you're in the extreme top tier. Artists like Drake, Kendrick Lamar, Taylor Swift, right? And the music industry hit $30 billion globally recently, but most of that money is going to a handful of superstars and platforms, right? Independent artists and mid-tier artists are getting almost nothing out of streaming, right? Now, also, there's a flood of content. 100,000 plus tracks are uploaded daily. Daily. So that means there's over, basically, you can call it a million tracks being uploaded every week, right? 4 million tracks being uploaded every month, right? So now, with this going on for streaming more so became a thing maybe around 2014, 2015, around there. That's when, all this stuff like Apple Music and Tidal, where all these start to hit the scene and, where people started more so streaming music more, right? Now, with that going on since then, it's been about 10 years. So that means there's billions and billions of songs out at this point, right? So this is resulting in streaming growth slowing down and flatlining, right? The streams of current music is declining in recent data, and payouts are not keeping up with inflation or costs, right? And now this is a big issue because it was already hard enough for them to make money off of the music of an artist, right? And that's kind of not to digress into another topic, but a lot of people are wondering why you see things like there being more artists who are being sought out based off of their popularity first rather than their music first. Well, it's because people seem to not care about music as much. And on top of that, the economics of streaming are very, very broken, right? So, but the label needs to get their money back somehow. When labels sign artists to a record deal, this is where I was getting to about the 360 thing, right? Most artists are signed to a 360 deal, right? And that's a deal where basically the label gets a percentage of everything the artist does. Like before, artists back in the 90s, when they were signed to a label, if that artist went and did a movie, the label didn't mind because they just saw it as promotion for the album that's going to sell more and all that kind of stuff, right? But now they have artists signed to a deal where even if that artist does a movie, the label gets a piece of that money, right? If the artist does a Coca-Cola commercial, they get a piece of that money, right? If the artist goes and appears on a podcast or something like that and they get paid for that, the label gets a piece of that money because the label gives what's called in advance. So if an artist gets paid, like when you see these guys on contracts, so like somebody gets a $5 million contract, that does not mean that artist was just gifted $5 million, right? That means they have a deal in which they're going to make that much money so long as they hit certain milestones, and along with that deal, they get what's called an advance. So sometimes, like for instance, if in let's use the same situation, artist gets a $5 million contract, they'll probably get 1 million of that up front, but that $1 million needs to be paid back to the label, right? So that's kind of like the catch 22 that these artists are in. And then on top of that, the labels will own their masters for the recordings during the duration of that contract, right? So that ends up creating a specific challenge for artists and specific challenges for the label if the artist can't make that money back, right? And also, I think there's the aspect to mention of just, people's attention spans and what they're paying attention to, right? Like back in the 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, there wasn't as much stuff to pay attention to, right? And media and content was a lot more segregated into different realms, right? Now all content is just being morphed and mushed together, right? Like the amount of memes and of videos that are put together. Like there'll be a clip from some movie from the 90s that's using a song from 2015, right? With memes involved and all that kind of stuff, right? All that kind of content creation is going on, right? And it takes up attention, right? Before, there used to be like we didn't have a world where people can access whatever they're looking for immediately, right? Like if there was an episode of your favorite TV show, like let's say you like the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, right? During the 90s, when the Fresh Prince of Bel Air was running, you had to wait weekly for the episodes, right? It wasn't a thing like how you have now with Netflix where you can just go and watch the whole thing, right? So artists are not just competing with other artists now, like musician artists, right? Music artists are not just competing with other musicians, right? They're competing with Netflix. They're competing with Kai Cenat and Aiden Ross, right? They're competing with streamers as well and all forms of content creators, right? So this is something that's adding into these issues because people have so many options when it comes to entertainment now. People have so many options when it comes to music now, right? There's people who just go and listen to playlists of music from the 90s and 2000s. They don't even listen to no new music, right? So this is the challenge that's coming into play for the music industry, right? Now I'd even get to the AI thing, but now I guess we can get to there. But so the AI tsunami is flooding everything, right? All right, so for one, AI generated tracks are exploding. There's tens of thousands of AI tracks being uploaded daily to Spotify, right? Some reports say 40,000 to 60,000 fully AI songs per day are being uploaded, right? That's a report from the end of 2025, right? And also on top of that, a lot of these songs are becoming more and more indistinguishable from human made songs, right? Some of them have already charted or hit millions of plays, right? And platforms, they treat AI, things made by AI, they treat it the same as stuff that's made by humans in the algorithm, right? So there's no penalties for it. So with all this AI stuff coming out, it's drowning out real creators, right? Because that stuff is being made quicker, it's being produced quicker, it's being put out quicker, and there's more of it being put out, right? Meanwhile, humans are spending a whole year working on an album, right? And that's not even to mention the amount of people who are trying to do and create music now, right? As opposed to before. Now, so if AI stays monetizable, human artists cannot compete on volume or cost, right? It's impossible, right? So labels lose leverage, royalties get diluted to near zero, and the incentive to create high quality human music collapses completely, right? Right. So especially if there's not going to be no separation, even though I think they will, but if there's not going to be any separation in regards to the difference between AI and humans, and even if they do a separation, uh, because creators and the audience have a different viewpoint, right? Like it's almost like with movies. There's people who or not almost like movies as creation, but I'm comparing it to like music, right? I'm basically saying music fans don't see things the same way how musicians do, right? The majority of us people that watch movies, we don't really have knowledge about cinematography or what kind of technology is being used. Like when CGI was first coming about, there are filmmakers who hated the idea, right? But I think it's pretty clear as day what how a lot of the Marvel movies have done, and even a couple of movies before it, that we don't really care in regards to CGI. We care about our movie experience. We care about if the movie's nice, right? So there's almost a similar thing going on in music, in which musicians they're very upset about, like the what's going on with AI music and all that, and but the thing that they have to understand is that the general audience of music listeners they do not care, right? From since about maybe about I would say maybe the mid 2000s most of the music production that we've been hearing is music made on computers, right? Even before that, a lot of music, particularly hip hop, the a lot of the instrumentation was being made with things such as the MPC, right, which is a music production computer, right? So the thing that I think kind of gets lost on musicians is the fact that the general audience does not care. They just want more stuff and they want better stuff, right? So that's the bottom line when it comes to this. So that's part of the reason why this is going to keep going. It's not going to change. Now, this is maybe the most damning thing in this is that live music and touring is crashing too, right? And this is the oldest safety net in regards to the music industry and probably the safest one because you can't download the experience of a live performance. That cannot be downloaded, that can't be replicated, that can't be sent. Like a recording can be sent, but it's not the same as being there, right? So touring and merch was making more money for artists than streaming, right? So you have festivals that are canceling, right? Hundreds of festivals were canceled in 2024 and 2025, and the trend's continuing into 2026 due to the production costs, high ticket prices, and dropping demand, right? A lot of people don't have money for that. There's like a lot of people who don't even like party anymore, right? Or even like go out, period, just because of the cost relative to their expenses, right? Right, like I always like to mention on this channel that people need food, shelter, and transportation, right? The more, and I think it's factually known at this point that you have the highest amount of people within the ages of like 20 to 30 and even 40 who are like living with parents, living with roommates and all that, right? It wasn't like that before. So with real life aspects coming into play, people are, I think there's like more and more people who feel silly going out and spending money on their favorite artists and all that kind of stuff, right? Meanwhile, their life situation is not together, right? And I can go into that all day, but I'm not trying to derail too much. But I think that's an aspect as well in regards to why live music and touring is crashing, right? You have what they call the post-pandemic inflation plus economic squeeze, right? So as I just mentioned, so fans are skipping festivals and shows, and the only people who are like really still getting a lot of traction, like the big artists, right? Like who are going on mega tours, like Taylor Swift, Kendrick Lamar, and those kinds, right? Smaller and mid-tier artists, they can't afford to tour profitably anymore, right? Costs have skyrocketed, right? While attendance has went down. So now it's becoming a real tricky thing in regards to how artists in the middle and lower areas are going to make money. And it's a question on if the music industry can just strictly run on the 10, 20 biggest artists, right? Because remember, there's a lot behind the industry, not just, those artists, but, production costs, right? Sound engineers, A&Rs that work at the record labels and stuff, right? People whose job it is to really function and make the whole machine function, right? So, so just to go over, because before I want to get into what direction I think things are going in, but I just want to go over these quick points, some of them that I already hit on before I do. But basically, there's no more iconic era-defining artists like the Beatles or Bob Dylan, right? Culture is moving way too fast. Attention is way too fragmented, right? Because even as big as Taylor Swift and Kendrick Lamar and those kinds of artists are, I think a lot of people would agree that those artists, they just don't seem as big as the artists who were in their realm 20, 30 years back, right? Like even artists who were not named Michael Jackson they were like huge, man. Like they're major. But like now it's just like they just feel kind of just part of the whole machine of noise that's in front of us at this point in time, right, in our phones. Uh, then you have labels that are laying off staff, right? They're restructuring, right? Platforms are experimenting with AI features while artists are trying to boycott or sue as if they can stop it. Consumer debt is rising up. Uh, the discretionary spending is dropping, right? Music is becoming a luxury that few can afford to support properly, right? Like the majority of people at this point, the best support they can give their favorite artists is giving them their attention, right? Like people don't go to concerts as much as they used to, and I know I certainly don't. Right? So I would say the overall thing that needs to be understood is all these changes, and along with the fact that the system right now currently rewards volume and algorithms over quality and artistry, right? So real creativity starves more, more, and more, right? So basically, streaming broke the old model, and AI is breaking the new one, and live music cannot save it, right? So within 2 to 4 years, we might see a mass artist exodus, right? Platform crackdowns on total AI dominance, or a full pivot to direct to fan models, right? So basically, where I think things are going to end up going in a direction, because if we look at it, it's commonly talked about now how streamers are bigger than rappers now. Streamers get the best fan reaction, right? Because compared to rappers tend to operate, well, musicians period, but I'm just using rappers for an example because rap is like the biggest genre of music at the moment. And but you know rappers, and along with other musicians, obviously they tend to operate with this mode of mystique, this mode of unreachability, right? Whereas far as with streamers, you may not be able to get them to see what you're saying, because say somebody like Kai Cenat or Aiden Ross and those types, DDG, they have a major following, right? But at the very least, you can see them live in front of a camera reacting to things that people are generally saying, people sending in videos and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's more of a connection there, right? Because as you're sitting there in your home, and on top of that, what they do is right there in front of you in your home. It's not like a thing like music where there needs to be this tour and all these interviews and the building of this mystique of the artist and all this kind of crap, right? So now that is kind of where things are shifting to, I think, right? I think the music industry is going to dissolve and just get absorbed into content creation in general, right? Where labels, they're not gonna be caring about somebody's following, because even a following doesn't really guarantee engagement at this point in time. Like, you can look it up. There's a whole lot of people on TikTok who talk about how they have hundreds of thousands of followers, millions of followers, but they're not making money, right? Whereas before they were, but they're not now because it's not getting engagement. Millions of followers. Like, if you have some girl that's popular because guys like how her butt looks, right? That doesn't guarantee that all those guys are gonna go listen to her music if she decides to randomly start doing music, right? So now I think it's gonna shift into a direction where basically labels are going to more start looking for artists who are good at engaging with their fans. And even that will completely change things, because now everyone they're approaching, because it already turned into this thing where labels were trying to go after people who already had a popularity about them, right? But now it's a thing where you're going to have people who already have their own machine going, who already have a whole content, uh, how to put it, I guess you could say, a content media empire of sorts, whether they're a streamer or whether they're somebody that does videos like how I do them, right? But basically, somebody who knows how to build connection, somebody who has a personality to them. That's going to more so be looked for, because that's going to be the only way that they're going to be able to make money. That's going to be the only way that they can compete with the whole flood of stuff that's coming out there, right? They're going to need people who are like separate from the algorithm, right? Because you have several, there are certain creators who have even like 50,000 subscribers on YouTube, right? But every time they put out a video, at least half to majority of those 50,000 subscribers are going to check them out, right? Right now, you have so-called rappers and musicians who have 1 million Instagram followers, 2 million Instagram followers, but they drop a piece of music, nobody cares. They drop an album, nobody cares, right? So now this is the issue that they're contending with. I think I even remember, not think, I know, DJ Academics was talking about how uh, there are companies that are calling him and trying to buy his YouTube catalog from him so that they can make the residual income that his YouTube catalog is making, right? So now, as I said, everything is being absorbed into content creation, all right? So to summarize, right, well, I already said like the whole thing about streaming breaking, but I'm just kind of trying to summarize this endpoint that I was getting at. And but basically, music is not going to die, right? But the music industry, it definitely is going to dissolve and change. I think a lot of record companies are going to more so turn into managing companies, and companies that have like 50 to 100 people on their staff, they're going to cut down to having about 5 to 10, because even the work that a lot of those people do, AI can do that work, right? What labels really are going to need are people who, like streamers, know how to gather together an audience, right? And an audience that will tune in and check out anything that they do.